Shall we go to too low? Too low.
Let's do too low. I'm going to lead us in. I guess we start. I'm going to start at the top of the list now, or number 100. I'm going to work my way down. I feel like I'm going to need to buy a Spurs jersey because I keep mentioning this person in every video now. I feel like Chris Paul at 99 is ridiculously low, and he should be a little bit higher. You're talking about in the previous section, we talked about injuries holding players back. Now, admittedly, his age and his decline that's happening due to playing his 20th season are causes a concern. But he actually played a lot of games. He's played a lot of games every time. He might get injured at some point during the season, but I can guarantee 60 out of him. I can't guarantee 60 out of Mitchell Robinson or Joel Embiid or Kawhi Leonard at this point. So it's surprising that that has potentially influenced things. But what we have seen from Chris Paul is that when he shifts teams, he has a positive impact on them, right? And this is the intangibles maybe where his stats aren't going to jump out at you, but he's going to have an impact on the culture of the Spurs. And the Spurs might win 20 more games than they did last season because it's a low bar to begin with. And that's going to be probably as a direct result of Chris Paul. And the fact that Mike Conley is right there, yes, Mike Conley, a backup slash important point guard for what the Timberwolves are doing. It's just surprising to see Chris Paul that spot.
I,
What do you
I,
think?
I feel you're a real Chris Paul lover right now.
I love Chris
I
Paul. I
never
do.
knew
I actually do like Chris
I
Paul.
never knew you loved Chris Paul this much, but that's okay. It's always great to jump on the tail end of a Hall of Famer's career, I guess, and give
No,
him
I
some
have a
love, man.
Clippers jersey.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, you
actually
got a
I've
Clippers
been with him
jersey.
for a while.
Look, I feel like you're talking about Kawhi Leonard. We referenced that, everyone's still riding on his 2019 championship finals MVP. Raptors got the ring. What has CP3 done since 2021? And that's nearly about 4 years ago, man. Like, I know he helped OKC. I know, he helped obviously the Clippers. But he didn't really move the needle in Golden State. Then he was injured. And I think he'll provide leadership. Don't get me wrong, yeah? He'll provide leadership for this young Spurs locker, which is probably invaluable. But I would take a stab here that that's not really a huge part of ranking players in your top 100. I would make the argument almost that CP3 should not be in the top 100.
Okay. Well, you're a hater. No, I would say I think the way that I view it a little bit is if I had to build a team and I had 100 players to pick or 100 players to pick from, he would be higher than some of the other names on the list. And you know what? Potentially there are names outside of the list. It's difficult to know who got snubbed out of this. Like that
Oh,
feels
there are
like a
300
sneaky
other
entrance
players in the
for
league.
you.
They got
Yeah,
snubbed.
but I would like to see their names, right? I would like to see their faces, see their names to jog my memory because there's definitely
They're
someone
the
on
ones
this
standing
list.
there, no one's picked them yet. They're still standing in the corner.
Whatever. All right, let's go to the next one. So my next too low, I mentioned him before, but Isaiah Hartenstein. So at 88, I actually felt like he wasn't ranked last season, but he played a pivotal role in the Knicks, and then he's just signed a contract with OKC. And collectively, we all understood he was important for the Knicks, and he's just made OKC really good. This is a projection pick, but I'm just surprised that someone who had such an impact on the floor for the Knicks and made them a legitimate contender and has now been traded to another legitimate contender. I don't understand how his potential is only rated at 88 when Jaime Jaquez Jr. is rated above him, which doesn't feel like his role is that important. CJ McCollum, who hasn't
Ooh,
really
all the Miami
taken off
fans turned off.
the way. Jeremy Grant, who's playing for, you know, like nothing. There's definitely even Brandon Podminsky. I always struggle with his name a little bit. There's just some role players ahead of him on teams that aren't as important, aren't as relevant. I'm surprised that he's 82. What do you think?
When I was scrolling through this list, he was one of my last cuts that he was actually way too high. He was one of my cuts that I reckon he was too high. I don't even know if he should be top 100. Like, obviously, he's just there at 88.
Whatever.
No, but listen to me out here. This guy, if I just made the argument that Mitchell Robinson at 10 points, 10 rebounds, sorry, 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks, yeah, and asterisk injury history shouldn't make the top 100, I'm putting Isaiah Hartenstein behind him because his production, and we're talking about production here, okay? And I think, again, if you're talking about impact, that's the part where, again, we just touched upon it, Jamal Murray rides a team's impact, and that's driven predominantly by Jokic. I think Isaiah Hartenstein was fortunate in New York. They had a great season. He was a part of that, and going to OKC, I'm sure they're going to win many more games, this season too, in the next many years. But how much of a byproduct of that is him? And this is just a part of that, man. I personally think it's a bit high. You're saying a bit low, but
That's all good. That's why lists exist. I'm actually keeping us. I'm going to keep us a lot, a lot lower slash higher. I'm getting confused. I'm going with Drew Holiday at 36.
36. Yeah.
So um, I'm. This is where obviously, like, I'm really curious about how they do this. But Drew Holiday enters the Celtics as a huge X factor. Had some significant impact on them winning their title. Had like a 20-point game, but can also be a defensive powerhouse. And you look at Scotty Barnes being directly ahead of him. You look at Lauri Markkanen, who really has only had 1.5 good seasons. Chet Holmgren, who's a sophomore, who really just played his role. He didn't actually do much else. Jamal Murray, as you mentioned, as well, being ahead of him. Cat, who's up and down. DeMontis from the Kings. Jimmy, who doesn't play. Zion, who doesn't play all the time. De'Aaron, who doesn't play like for any substantial stuff, just really put stats. That's why I was surprised to see him at 36 because you're talking about a guy who it was borderline in the conversation for should he get the Finals MVP because he had such an impact on those series.
Mm.
So
Where
that felt too low for me.
where would you put him?
Where would I put him? I could easily, without shuffling anyone out, I could just bump everyone up and probably put him
Trade
maybe
him for Murray.
25.
31. Trade him for Murray.
Well, no, I could go to
25. 25.
25.
25.
I could go to 25
Okay.
because you could convince me. Because I think the thing is, you're looking. I don't think we're looking at these players. Can they be an all-star or like I don't know how we're really looking at these players, but I'm looking at would you want Drew Holiday on your team over these other people? So I guess the thing is, I'm trying to win an NBA championship. Who would you rather have on your team? Assuming you already have a star, because Kyrie Irving and um, Drew Holiday already have stars on their team. Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Drew Holiday or would you rather have Kyrie Irving?
Look, I know who I'd rather have, man. I'd rather have Domantas Sabonis. And at 29, he's way too low. Yeah, I did people not notice he's a triple double machine? Like, he and we've talked about this before, he's Jokic light. And I'm not saying he's necessarily top 10, but at 29, okay, he's also 3 spots behind the Aaron Fox. I think last year they were next side by side to each other. Yeah, and it's like a classic like LeBron and AD sort of situation, like these two teammates. Where do you sort of sit them and how do you rank their impact? Like again, you could make that argument for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Yeah, Tatum player has a great regular season. Statistically, is more productive, but then Jaylen Brown comes along, wins Finals MVP, and plays best when it matters most. I think that's relevant too if you look at the bigger picture. And you probably would put a multiplier on finals and playoff performance, no doubt. Surely, yeah, that's when it matters.
Mm.
Yeah, that's why you talk about Jimmy Butler. If you didn't put a multiplier on stuff like that, then Jimmy Butler probably 10, 20 spots lower because you're always talking about Jimmy Butler when he hits the playoffs that he's a winner and he lifts that finds that now the gear and the Heat in the finals twice now in the last 4 or 5 years now. So Sabonis at 29, man, I think that's way too low. Give the guy some love, man. I swear I got to
It's
keep doing this until he gets to the top 15.
I like it. It's the record. I think this is like sometimes you get players and you get a clue as to how I think the rankings were occurring, and they do make reference to it, but they clearly are holding him back because the Sacramento Kings did not make the playoffs. That's their logic here. Um, do I agree with that? I don't think that's the intent of player rankings. And you look at the Lakers, who are always in the play-in at this point. The fact that they were able to have 2 players in the top 15,
Mm.
we're not clearly evaluating wins, so it does feel odd for Sabonis to be there.
Consistency. Feels like a referee issue right now. Consistency, please. 25. Take two here. Kyrie Irving. All right. He has gone up 9 spots. Um, but I think it's still too low. Yeah, Kyrie Irving in his prime. Here's a good question here. And look, let's not spend too many minutes on it. But in his prime, was Kyrie a top 10 player? You'd have to say
In his,
yes. You'd have to say yes, right? Would
I
you?
need to see.
You have to look at all
No,
the
because I
roster.
think the thing is it's the context of when he was in his prime. Because when he was in his prime, I think of Steph Curry being in his prime. I think of James Harden being in his prime, KD being in his prime, LeBron being in his prime. And if you give me a little bit more time, that list is a lot more competitive. I think people forget how strong the guard situation was between 2010 and 2020. There were a lot of guards. John Wall might have been still floating around as a impressive guard at that point. So I'm sorry, I
Look,
can't jump on this Kyrie bandwagon
it's
with you.
like we can come back with that with our stats guy that we'll never have, and we reference every single week. I'm making sure that I reference him every single week, so one day we get a stats guy.
He can
But
just backfill all this content. That's great. Can't wait for it.
but look, honestly, if we're gonna flip him, man, we got Tyrese Maxey at 19, we got Ja Moran at 20, and obviously plays in similar roles. Even at Lillard at 23. Come on, Kyrie, man, he just went to the finals. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
a
I
second
I
option on
like that.
Mavs. I think he goes up a couple of spots. Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
easy. Swap him and Lillard as a no-brainer, sure.
All right, my third nominee here for I am way too low on this list. Let me scroll to the range that he was in. 54, Alperen Sengun. Now,
Yeah,
now, you know what? We just talked about Derek Lively at 56.
yeah.
Yeah, and he went all the way up from no ranking to 56. And Sengun, if we just talked about Sabonis is Jokic light, like 2.0, then Alperen Sengun is probably in that same mold as light, like the basic version here at this point of his career, because like 22 or something like that, I think he is. Okay, and just imagine where he'll be in 5 years' time, and he probably would be putting up the same sort of production as these guys. So I like the fact he's risen all the way into the list now at 50 something. But again, looking at some of these names like RJ Barrett just ahead of him, even Franz Wagner, OG, in front of him as well. I just surely he goes up a little bit higher and he breaks into that next list, which is a top 50 list. Not sitting at 54, man. I think that's a little bit way too low.
Yeah, I mean, there was borderline all-star buzz about him, and he kind of came out of nowhere for people, and he's projected to still have good stats. And so far, the preseason has suggested that we're all good. Was it an apprehension to push him forward because of the injury that he had, or the one and done season, as you were referencing? Because it was really his first big breakout season. But yeah, fascinating list because I look through maybe the 40s. So you look at who is sitting in the 40s. Aaron Gordon being above him, I
Mm.
think Şengün is probably more impactful to a team than Aaron Gordon is in terms of leading a team. LaMelo Ball, we didn't talk about, but that's another injury snake bitten
Yeah, he did
person.
slide. I think he slid like maybe 20 spots or so even.
He has. Kristaps went up, even though he didn't play a lot last season because of obviously the X factor that he provided for Boston. So yeah, I think after talking about our lists, clearly wins did matter. Unless you're an All NBA historic player, then that overruled what you
Here's
achieved.
here,
Is I don't know. I can't really figure
Hey,
it out.
I said at the start, man, this ain't rocket science. So maybe apply the part that if a player is significantly injured, he can't go up. There's
Shouldn't no.
what scenario, well, clearly there've been scenarios here, but what scenario would you justify a player that has been injured significantly? Let's say they've missed a 65 game threshold, okay? That you're suggesting that now they're better than they were before. If anyone, that would be Embiid. Yeah, and you could make that argument because before he got injured, he fell woefully short of 65 games, but that he was on track for more points than minutes. Some crazy stat there, yeah, if you think about it in itself there. Yeah, but at the end of the day, he went 5 spots down, I think, on this list, which is justifiable. So any player here that's got an injury history surely must by default go down, not up.
I think you'd have to look at I look at the context of say Steph Curry when he broke his hand, right? And we already knew that Clay was out, so there was a little bit of a sneaky tank job, I think, by Golden State that he had a full season arrest on an injury that he didn't need a full season for, and he comes back with a high draft pick. That's how you could make a case and say he will be better because he's had a year rest. But you're totally right. I think at best it should just be a maintain.